The biggest news in Poland today is the release of the National Chamber of Auditors, or NIK, report on the PKN Orlen and Lotos merger. The NIK has released a report concerning the merger of Orlen and Lotos, shedding light on what they describe as a shockingly low price for the sale of assets from the Lotos Group, at least 5 billion zloty below the estimated value. The report also highlights that during the merger process, Minister of State Assets negligently performed statutory supervisory duties. According to the report published on Monday, although continuity of crude oil and fuel supplies was ensured during the control period, the government's goals aimed at improving the fuel security of our country were not achieved. However, the report emphasises that the key to this security, the merger of PKN Orlen and Grupa Lotos, considering the remedial measures agreed upon between Orlen and the European Commission, has resulted in significant risks to this security. The report also raises concerns about the significant risks and improper supervision by Minister Jacek Sasin. It also questions the sale of Lotos assets at a price significantly below their estimated value, highlighting that Saudi Aramco paid approximately 7.2 billion zloty less for a part of Lotos than it was worth. Moreover, the report indicates that the sale of shares in the Gdansk refinery to Aramco occurred below the valuation by approximately 3.5 billion zloty. It also reveals details about Aramco's acquisition of assets, including wholesale operations and the purchase of a 50% stake in Lotos Air BP, along with an aviation fuel sale agreement amounting to a total payment of 9.4 billion zloty. The report criticises the Minister of State Assets for inadequately overseeing the merger process and failing to analyse its impact on the domestic fuel market. Additionally, it points out that the Minister did not utilise available powers to obtain necessary data related to the merger process. Furthermore, the report addresses concerns regarding the loss of control over critical infrastructure due to divestments and the potential threat to national fuel security. It highlights instances where Aramco gained significant influence, potentially jeopardizing the country's energy policy. In response, a member of Orlen's board, Janusz Szewczak, dismissed the NIK report as unreliable and based on erroneous methodology. Szewczak argued that the calculations were flawed and promised to publish evidence refuting the NIK's findings. The merger between Orlen and Lotos, approved by the European Commission in June 2022, aimed to enhance fuel security and market competitiveness. However, the NIK report raises serious questions about the process and its implications for national interests and security. The European Union's foreign policy head, Josep Borrel, was in Warsaw today for a meeting with Poland's new foreign minister, Radosław Sikorski. The meeting included many topics, but key on the agenda was the war in Ukraine. Both ministers agreed that the amount of munitions being sent to support Ukraine's efforts must be increased. Sikorski said, "Ukraine is still outgunned by the Russians on the front, and we need to help them level the balance." Sikorski and Borrell were talking about the Czech proposal, which called for the EU to buy munitions for Ukraine from outside the bloc, with Borrell saying that the problem isn't insufficient European production capacity, but the export of EU-made munitions to third countries.
So the best way of selling more to Ukraine or donating more to Ukraine is to try to tell the others, please, wait. We are not at war. You can wait some months and divert this production to Ukraine. This is a political decision that member states has to take.
The Polish foreign minister was in complete agreement with Borrell. The two ministers also stressed that they don't oppose buying munitions from outside the European Union either. And when it comes to shopping on global markets for Ukraine, in my opinion, I think the more, the better. Just before the meeting, Russian Foreign Minister Chief Sergei Lavrov indicated that any cargoes containing weapons for Ukraine would become a legitimate target for Russia. The Russians also suggested that Western arms support hinders Russian-Ukrainian negotiations. Moscow accuses the United States and NATO of direct involvement in the Ukrainian conflict, not only supplying weapons, but also training personnel in various NATO countries. According to them, the call for prioritizing Ukraine's needs in arms supplies highlights a continuing tension between Western support for Ukraine and Russia's opposition to it. An extraordinary parliamentary session convened by the Hungarian opposition on Monday to vote on Sweden's NATO bid saw the absence of lawmakers from the ruling Fidesz party, resulting in no quorum and further delay to ratification. This boycott is extremely awkward. It's extremely unpleasant that up to today they have been blocking Sweden's NATO accession, and they have not given any real explanation for this. The United States ambassador, along with counterparts from NATO allies such as Poland, Denmark and Slovakia, attended the session, exerting pressure on Budapest to endorse Sweden's NATO membership. United States Ambassador David Pressman emphasized the urgency of Sweden's admission to NATO as a national security matter, urging Budapest to act promptly.
Sweden's NATO accession is an issue that directly affects the United States' national security and affects the security of our alliance as a whole. And we look forward to watching this closely and to Hungary acting expeditiously.
Fidesz lawmakers insist on a visit from Swedish Prime Minister Ulf Kristersson to Budapest before ratifying the bid. Parliament is set to reconvene in late February following a winter break. Sweden applied for NATO membership back in May 2022. This marked a significant shift in its security policy, which was influenced by Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Prime Minister Viktor Orban, who maintains stronger ties with Russia than many EU states and NATO members, asserts his government's support for Sweden joining the alliance. However, the relevant bill has been stalled in Parliament since mid-2022. Many suspect that Orban is using Sweden's accession bid to gain leverage with the EU over their spat over the rule of law, the same spat that Poland's former government had to deal with. United States Secretary of State Antony Blinken arrived in Saudi Arabia today on his first stop in a wider tour of the Middle East. This is the US Secretary of State's fifth trip to the region since Hamas's deadly 7th of October attacks last year. The visit aims to propel negotiations for a normalization agreement between Saudi Arabia and Israel, alongside addressing governance issues in post-war Gaza. Amid escalating tensions, Blinken's visit follows US retaliatory strikes on Iran-backed militia in Syria, Iraq and Yemen, prompted by a recent drone attack against US forces in Jordan that claimed American lives. In Riyadh, Blinken held talks with Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman and Foreign Minister Prince Faisal bin Farhan Al Saud. This visit underscores the urgency of the situation, described by senior US officials as one of the most precarious in decades. Blinken's agenda includes reinforcing the Biden administration's stance, which seeks to avoid escalating conflict with Iran at all costs, while also seeking to de-escalate tensions throughout the entire region. The United States aims to foster dialogue with Arab states and Israel regarding normalization efforts and Gaza's post-war scenario, amidst continuing discussions facilitated by Qatar and Egypt. Notably, Blinken emphasized the importance of progress on Palestinian statehood, a pathway to integrate Israel into the region. However, challenges persist, especially regarding Israel's security concerns and the Palestinian Authority's role in governing Gaza. This fifth diplomatic visit underscores the delicate nature of negotiations, with both sides facing the need for significant compromises in order for lasting progress to be achieved. On Sunday, President Nayib Bukele was declared winner of El Salvador's national elections in a huge landslide, claiming some 80% of the preliminary vote, according to officials. Bukele was the heavy favourite to win another 5-year term, as voters largely cast aside concerns about the erosion of democracy to reward him for a fierce gang crackdown that improved security in the Central American country. Pre-election polling put support in the single digits for the candidates of FMLN and Arena, two parties that held power between them until 2019. With voters fed up after decades of traditional politics marked by violence and corruption. Wildly popular, Bukele has campaigned on the success of his security strategy, under which the authorities suspended civil liberties to arrest more than 75,000 Salvadorians without charge. The detentions led to a sharp decline in nationwide murder rates and transformed a country of 6.3 million people that was once among the world's most dangerous. We're on the cusp of winning the war against the gangs. Literally, we went from being, it's not an exaggeration, it's not a hyperbole, literally we went from being the most dangerous country in the world to being the most secure in all of the Western Hemisphere. The youthful and hip Bukele became very popular among the young and tech-savvy when he included Bitcoin as legal tender in the country. When he introduced special measures to deal with crime, he then earned the title of world's coolest dictator. We end tonight's program with some business news. In a significant development for the technology industry, Nasdaq-listed powerhouse Yandex NV has announced a colossal deal valued at 475 billion rubles, or $5.21 billion, signaling a strategic shift in its operations. The agreement entails the sale of all its assets in Russia to a consortium of domestic investors, including a fund associated with the energy giant Lukoil. This move underscores Yandex's departure from the Western tech sphere it once courted, solidifying its transaction to solely Russian ownership. Yandex, renowned as Russia's Google, has long been considered a potential global player, but recent geopolitical tensions, notably Russia's actions in Ukraine, have prompted a re-evaluation of its corporate strategy. After 18 months of negotiations with Kremlin officials, Yandex has taken the decisive step to separate its Russian businesses from its Dutch parent company. The deal, subject to regulatory approval, includes a mandated discount of at least 50% to fair value, reflecting the complexities of international transactions involving Russian assets. Consortium First, led by Yandex's senior management in Russia and bolstered by financial investors such as Argonaut, is spearheading the acquisition. This landmark transaction, denominated in Chinese yuan, signifies a pivotal movement for Yandex's trajectory and underscores the evolving landscape of the tech industry in Russia.